Hey, everybody, it's day 4, and we still don't have I'm just kidding. We won't talk about that. Anyways, hey, welcome to DisrupTV. You're in the green room, and we will have some fun here. We're going to introduce our guests. I'm Ray, one of the co-founders and co-anchors here, and we got Vala Afshar, my co-founder, co-anchor, and our awesome producer, Elle. But more importantly, we have guests, and our guests, we're going to introduce them in reverse order. We're going to ask them where they're dialing in from, and more importantly, what are they going to talk about today? So, Nick, where are you dialing in from? What's up with you? And maybe you got a book out.
So thanks for having me, Ray. And I'm dialing in. I normally say sunny California, but it's actually a rainy California. And we're going to talk about the book we recently announced or we released, The Titanium Economy.
Woohoo, Titanium Economy. All right. And Joe, what are we calling in from? And what are we talking about today?
Yeah, I'm in the suburban Detroit area, just north of Detroit. And I won't even talk about weather. It's cold, it's rainy, it's gray. It's worse than where any of you all are, I'm sure. But we're going to talk about Take Command, which is a new Dale Carnegie book that I co-authored with my good friend, Michael Crom.
Very, very cool. You can pick up that book and hang out at Zingerman's and grab something good in A2. All right, Deb, where are you calling in from? What are we talking about?
I'm calling in from the gorgeous coast of Maine. And I'm going to talk about, a bunch of old fuddy-duddies running companies in this country. Oh, yeah, that.
Oh, maybe that. It's day 4. Anyways, maybe there'll be a day 5.
Penalty kicks.
All right. Well, hey.
After day 4.
Very, very cool. Well, hey, I'll give it back to you, Elle. And for those watching, we are about to take off.
Okay. 3, 2, 1.
Hello and welcome. My name is Vala Afshar. I'm the Chief Digital Evangelist at Salesforce and your co-host for the next hour. This is episode 1 of 2023, episode 305, since Ray and I started this podcast in 2016. You can send your questions on Twitter using hashtag DisrupTV. Follow us at DisrupTV Show, and if you can help us elect a House Speaker, we'll answer your questions. It's my pleasure to introduce my co-host, Ray Wang. He's the CEO and founder of Constellation Research. He's the best-selling author of Everybody Wants to Rule the World. We are seeing that in the last 4 days. Ray's a regular television business and tech news contributor on Fox Business, Yahoo Finance, Bloomberg, CNBC. Literally every other day I see him on TV. It's ridiculous. He's, in my opinion, in a good way, ridiculous. In my opinion, he's one of the top futurists to follow on Twitter at RWANG0. Welcome, Ray Wang, to our first episode of 2023.
Woohoo, 2023. Thank you, Vala. I'm here with Vala Afshar, and as he said, he's the Chief Digital Evangelist for Salesforce. He's also the author of The Pursuit of Social Business Excellence, and executives around the world pay attention to every one of his inspirational and insightful tweets. So when he's not hosting, keynoting, or leading events at Salesforce, you can find him speaking on business TV outlets such as Bloomberg and posting insightful analyses on ZDNet, such as this show. But hey, it's not about us. It's about our amazing guests. And who do we have to kick off 2023?
So when Ray and I invest in a DisrupTV jacket, our next guest would be a 5th appearance jacket winner. So that's one of our budgeting exercises we need to do for this year, because Deb is going to get a jacket. Deb Mills-Scofield, strategic innovation consulting, venture capitalist, mentor, advisor, my mentor, one of the key mentors in my life. Deb is passionate about helping companies and individuals see what's possible and implement plans to achieve them. Deb co-created Brown University's cognitive science concentration and graduated in 3 years. Right, it took me 6 to get out of college. 3 years. And as an alum, just co-created a new design engineering concentration in Brown University School of Engineering. At Bell Labs, Deb created one of AT&T's highest revenue generating patents that we all take for granted today. We can talk about that. Deb's articles in Harvard Business Review is how we met, how Deb and I met. She wrote a beautiful tearjerker article about the impact of network and community, especially if you're an immigrant. And that's how I connected with her on Twitter. And my most amazing experience on Twitter was because of our relationship with Deb. And maybe someday we'll talk about that, although there's been articles written about that. Deb's official position at Brown University includes being the university's mentoring maven, adjunct lecturer, member of the School of Engineering Advisory Council, mentor for the joint Brown University Rhode Island School of Design Masters in Design Engineering, member of the Student Van Winkle Ventures Investment Committee, and advisor to several student design and entrepreneurial groups. You can follow Deb on Twitter at D-Scofield. She's very active on Twitter. After this, she'll be even more active. Welcome back, Deb, even though you don't have your jacket, to DisrupTV.
That's right. I got my LL Bean gear wherever it is.
There we go. There we go. If we do get a Disrupt jacket, you'll be the first. I promise.
In blue.
In blue. Okay. All right.
Well, hey, Deb, welcome. And this is amazing. We want to take off the new year and really just get a sense of what's going on, what's happening. I mean, leaders are facing what we call the 5 forces, from inflation to interest rates to inventory to infection to invasion. They're not sure what's happening. And you've got the pulse of what leaders are thinking about in these chaotic times. Now, what perspective should leaders take?
I could be really flippant and say, a chill pill would be good. I think leaders have got to get really comfortable with all of this real fast if they're not already, because this is just, I think, how things are going to be. Maybe we won't always have a global pandemic, but, the economic uncertainty, all that, and to me, I think one of the most important things, other than having, which ties into a compelling value proposition for the user, not for you, is I know we always say this, your people, but it is always about the people, because that's how you build resilience. Yeah, you can build it into systems, into IT, all that other stuff and processes. But at some point, all that is enabled and used and supported by people. So I think it's got to really be actionalized. I love making verbs out of nouns or whatever it is. I mean, you've really got to do it and not just say it. And it's going to be so amazingly uncomfortable because you can say, oh, I had to do that during a pandemic and all this. But then to say, I have to do this now as just the regular course of running business is really scary. And, if you're not up to it, admit it and move aside.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I think a strong, bold comment. You are known for mentoring a lot of young university undergraduate, graduate students, many, dozens, hundreds. In the time I've known you, I would say hundreds. And mostly brown students. So really sharp, really ambitious, smart students. You and I have a common friend, Saul Kaplan, who's an advocate for random collisions. He believes that you can better yourself, your society, community, anyone around you, if you have that beginner's mindset and you're open to random collisions, because everyone you meet knows more about something than you do. That's just a fact. So the last 2 years for these students or young, early career employees, you'd have meetings like this and you hit the, leave button and there's no more conversations after. So there are no random collisions before the meeting or after the meeting. No, and as a sponsor, mentor, and our mutual friend Whitney Johnson talks about how sponsorship is even more important than being a mentor in terms of career progression for the folks you sponsor. I used to listen to conversations before the meeting, the great questions during the meeting, and then proactively after the meeting, seek out folks that I thought would be a good use of my time in terms of being a mentor and sponsor, because we just can't scale and be mentors and sponsors to everyone. most of the executives I speak to today are struggling because of this hybrid mode that we've been since March of 2020. And we're now getting close to 3 years of this hybrid environment. What are your clients telling you in terms of productivity, career growth, opportunity for planning, succession planning, and what's the struggle for leaders when we've been in this digital setting where it's difficult to do random collisions?
Well, it's interesting. So it is challenging to do random collisions, but it is not impossible.
Yeah.
And I look at one of my clients, when they would onboard someone, they would walk that person all around the office and they were one office place and introduce them. And so they're like, well, how do we do that with onboarding? I'm like, well, you got this Microsoft Teams thing. You can just pop in. I said, why don't you just do that together virtually? Yeah, it's a little more work, but, and one new hire they brought on her own, just started sending messages to everybody in the company saying, hi, I'm new. I know I can't run into you, but can I just spend 5 minutes to chat with you and see what you do?
Nice.
So, there are ways to do it. Is it as easy? No. But it means taking initiative, which means you might care more than just dropping by someone's desk.
Yeah.
And there's also the, do your due diligence before you talk to someone, Google them, look them up. And then always when you're talking to someone, you always ask, who else should you talk to? Or ask them who's influenced their lives. Could you reach out? So there are ways to do that. But what I see a lot of my C-suite, which are my clients, struggling with is productivity's there and it just annoys the hell out of them. In the sense that
they want to see you. They want to see you.
They would say butts in seats, to which tushies in seats. Well, tushies might be in seats. They're just not your seats. And what do you really care if the work's getting done? Are you paying them by the hour or are you paying them for the work and the job they're to do? And so that's a huge mindset shift for a lot. And it's really hard, but that's not going to go away. And if you want to hire the best talent, you got to accept it.
Deb, are you seeing trends that say, maybe more established workers prefer to be like at, in a hybrid environment, or is it more Gen Z that prefer to be at home as well in the hybrid environment, or is it just across the board?
So it's totally surprised me, and I think a lot of people, although I look back and say it would have made sense, right? So you would have thought the young folks would have really wanted this. Those people with kids or parents, those of us that have all these things to do at home in addition to working, so you got to juggle kids, you got to do this, you got to do that. They tend to just love the hybrid because I can throw a load of laundry in.
Yeah,
I can go run an errand. I can go take a nice walk, right?
That's true.
While the younger folks have I don't know if we've redefined, but we've realized that the office is a social place, not a workplace. So I look at my son, and he's 25, and he'd been remote for 2 years, and he actually likes going in the office once or twice a week. Yeah. But it's social, and I see that with my students that are recent grads working. So they want the social aspect, where there are those of us that are past that just want the time. Yeah. So it's been a reverse of what I think most people thought. Now, there are some young people that like the nomad. I have a student who's like in a different state or continent every 3 months. Same company she works for. Wow. But in general, it's been more, I think, and this is all qualitative, not quantitative, that have wanted to go back to an office.
My son did an internship. Oh, sorry, Vali, go ahead.
No, go ahead, please.
My son did an internship last year. It was all remote. And what was really weird was you lacked the random collisions, right? And you couldn't get trained in the normal way. I mean, it was a fun internship. It was great, but you also didn't have the internship class. You go after work, go do something, right? You couldn't wait for someone who is really smart to kind of pick their brains and say, hey, how did you come up with that, right? All those kind of conversations didn't happen. So to me, it felt like, this year he should try something more in person.
Yeah,
And
no, I think about my own career. I started in grad school doing internships, and I would deliberately find the engineer that I admired most, and it may have been the technology he or she was working on, or I would go to engineering meetings and I would go, wow, this person is really guiding the direction of the roadmap. And so I would try to find ways to get on their radar. And many of these folks actually stayed later. Again, this is not anecdotal, but I remember the great engineers I admired early in my career. They were the first in the office, last to leave. They were working on projects that passionately. Mm-hmm. And so the times that I had with these folks were usually not, the normal hours. And I want to follow up with a question. When CXOs engage you, Deb, it's to help them innovate. You're an innovation expert.
Yeah. Well, so they hire me to help them create, a strategic plan, which I don't know how to do without innovation being key. So where do we want to be in 3 to 5, 10 years, and how are we going to get there?
Yep.
Is that harder when you are doing this in a hybrid mode? Is innovation harder? It must be. it seems like you're in the conversation, so they're asking for your advice. So I think I know the answer.
Now fortunately during COVID, the clients that I actually did a whole strategic planning session with, I knew. But the innovation, there's some you can do remote, but there's it's those shower moments. You're in the shower and you get an idea. It's those kind of things that if you're just sitting around at lunch, or you're walking, or you're whatever, and you're not able to reach out and grab someone and get to the whiteboard.
Yes.
So I think it is impacting innovation. I don't know how much and for how long, and I don't know what we can do about circumventing that, because a lot of people are just going hybrid, whether we need to or not. To your point about, though, in the office. So when I was just a kid at Bell Labs, so I was 20 when I graduated from Brown, I go right to Bell Labs. I remember sitting on the floor in the office of Cheswick and Bellevin, who wrote the security stuff for Unix. And it was a green carpet in their office, I think. And I would just sit there and listen to them. And there's a lot to be said. Yep. We need that.
Absorbing.
And so
isn't it true that strategic development and planning and innovation is synchronous work? It's not asynchronous in nature. So I don't understand. It's soccer versus tennis in my mind, where there's interdependencies, input outputs that are required in the life cycle of developing a strategic plan or innovation. So I don't know how you can make it work as efficiently where you're completely remote or mostly hybrid or mostly remote.
Yeah, you can do preparatory parts. So the data gathering, the analysis of that. But when it comes down to really, what I call a planning retreat, where we're all sitting together.
Yeah.
I've done that virtually. You don't get the same caliber. What I think you get is either a long tactical plan or a really short strategic plan.
Yeah, right. Unless they all read, the value prop by Alex Osterwalder. If they really prepped and came to it remotely, maybe it would work. But short of that,
very few people are trained to that level. But that would be a great book.
That's why I want a planning retreat where we are away from the office and we're all together. Because when the real cool stuff happens in the strategic ideas, it's at night after dinner with drinks. It's not. No.
No. I've been at the fire pits at the Constellation Connect conference, and the level of deepness of the conversations that happen casually when people are transparent, radical transparency. They don't have that facade of fancy words and acronyms, and they're honest about this is shit. It's not going to work.
It's not going to work. I know. I love that.
I agree with you. I don't think you need alcohol per se, but
I'm a drinker, but
Yeah, neither am I.
Well, you're not a drinker, but you're a thinker. But Deb, real quick, I wanted to talk about one last thing. It's really the shift in work-life balance by generations, and it's something that is emerging everywhere. And I think we're seeing this. And I always wonder if it was just like, in my generation, we worked harder. Like, is it one of those things, or is there really a paradigm shift here?
I think it's both. And I'm very much of an and versus either. But I hear my clients saying, well, these people, they're not willing to put in the hours.
A lot.
And I'm saying hours are work. And I said, but the point, well, they're never going to get to our level with that. And I said, right. And you know what? They don't want to.
Yeah. It's not an aspiration anymore.
Understand that.
Yeah.
They don't understand. I'm going to give it my all for 40 to 50 hours a week and I'm out. And I don't know if they don't understand it. And I also wonder for some of them, aren't they a little jealous that they didn't have the guts to say that too? Or our society wasn't based like that then,
This is Deb Mills-Scofield, strategic and innovation consulting, venture capitalist, mentor, advisor, and friend of DisrupTV. You can follow her on Twitter at dscofield. Thank you so much for kicking off the year with us.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Happy New Year.
You as well. Thank you. Thank you. Please read her Harvard Business articles. She's an amazing writer. And I keep telling Deb she's got to write a book. Speaking of amazing book. Joe Hart, president and CEO of Dale Carnegie and Associates, and author of Take Command. Very early in the year, but my highest recommendation book of 2023. And I don't think this book's going to get dethroned the rest of the year in terms of my highest recommendation. Joe began his career as a practicing attorney. After taking Dale Carnegie courses, Joe reassessed his career path and future and ultimately left practice of law, going to work at a top real estate company and then founding an innovative e-learning company called InfoAlly. After selling the business 5 years later, Joe became the president of Asset Health, a U.S.-based health and wellness company, all before becoming the president and CEO of Dale Carnegie in 2015. In 2019, the CEO Forum Group named Joe as one of the 12 transformative leaders, giving him the Transformative CEO Leadership Award in the category of the people. Joe is the host of a top global podcast, Take Command, a Dale Carnegie podcast, and he speaks around the world on topics such as leadership, resilience, innovation, among others. He's a great follow on Twitter at Joseph K. Hart, H-A-R-T. Welcome, Joe, to DisrupTV, and congratulations on this. It's sure to be bestseller.
Oh, wow. Thank you, Val. I really appreciate it. Great to be with you. Ray, great to be with you as well.
Thank you, Joe.
No, this is awesome. The book you and Michael Crum wrote is going to be amazing. We're so lucky here to get the special preview. I believe the book comes out January 10th. So we're getting the early preview. We're super excited about that. And I just amazed. I mean, I remember seeing a lot of Dale Carnegie concepts as a kid, like as my dad was going through management training, and as formative in my adult career. So, are they still valid? Do they still have application? People keep saying times have changed, right? Like I've heard that like so many times. But do you think, I mean, from your point of view, have they withstood the test of time?
Yeah, it's incredible to see not only how they have, but also how they really transcend culture. And I think about how, I mean, first of all, prior to the pandemic, especially, I was traveling all over the world and I would see people who were taking Dale Carnegie programs and just talking. They'd come up to me and they'd say, "Oh my gosh, this program has really just changed my life or impacted me so much." But when you go back to Dale Carnegie himself is a brilliant innovator. He really understood people and the principles he defined. You really go back 100 plus years, still apply. People are the same. The way we connect may be a little bit different, but when you look at, say, How to Win Friends and Influence People, which has been a best-selling book for over 85 years, we have to ask, well, why would that be? And the reason is because it remains as relevant and useful today as it ever has been.
So evergreen.
So, I mean, you're the CEO, you're the president. So I'm assuming that, someone didn't come up to you and say, "Joe, you really need to write a book." This was you and Michael deciding that you're going to approach the task of updating this brand, this brilliant person with such great global reverence. Talk to us about the whole process of deciding, you and Michael, that you're going to take this awesome responsibility to create an amazing book.
Yeah, thanks for asking, Vala. Part of it is I feel like I've received a gift in my exposure to Dale Carnegie over the years. I mean, my dad talked about Dale Carnegie when I was younger. I took a Dale Carnegie course as a young lawyer. It changed my entire life. My wife, all 6 of my kids have taken Dale Carnegie. So this is something that's very, very personal to me and also to Michael. I mean, so Michael really grew up. He's Dale Carnegie's grandson and has been, so close to these principles. And so on the one hand, you've got these books that are absolute masterpieces, How to Win Friends and Influence People, How to Stop Worrying and Start Living. So, neither Michael nor I, really even presumed to be able to write a book of that caliber. What we wanted to do was to take these amazing ideas and to build on them and really to contextualize them for today's readers. So every chapter in the book focuses on ideas from Dale Carnegie. And there are current stories and stories from diverse people from all over the world. So it's hopefully a book that contextually people can really, really relate to. And my hope would be that it'll pique an interest in Dale Carnegie. Go back and read How to Win Friends. Go back and read How to Stop Worrying. Take a Dale Carnegie program because this is something that can really add incredible richness to your life and your career and your family, friends, etc. I
can tell you, I haven't finished the book. And the reason is, well, one, I'm a slow reader, but two, I find that I'm reading between the sentences. Like, I'll read a page, and then instead of continuing to read, I reflect on the powerful words and sentences and paragraphs. So I'm finding myself rereading pages, and it's not because it's complex language. It's not because you have some algorithm that I need to decipher. It's just so much sophistication in its simplicity. Like, I don't know how to explain it, but I'm very slowly going through the book, and it's joyful. It's really, really great. Sorry, Ray, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but anyway, it's brilliant work. Go ahead, Ray. Go.
Well, no. I want to build upon what Vala is saying there, right? I mean, a lot of times the lessons learned, apply just to business. But in this case, I mean, I feel like you can apply that to personal lives, your interactions, your inner core, how you think, the frameworks in terms of what really helps you kind of like make a decision. Have people told you that? Like, this is kind of something more than just a business book, but maybe like a life compass?
Yeah, it's interesting to hear you say that because that's one of the things we hear a lot with our Dale Carnegie programs. People might come in, a company might say, we're going to put people through a Dale Carnegie program. And then people start to talk about the impact it's had on them personally, on their personal relationships, their families, et cetera. And really Take Command it's the same type of thing. I mean, this is about, just to take a step back, if I may, I mean, there are 3 parts of this book. And it's really, we think about 2023, take command of 2023. Part 1 is take command of your thoughts and emotions. Right. So, I have to take command of myself before I do anything else. We've got stress and worry and anxiety, lack of confidence, whatever it might be. But, we're dealing with these. And how do we get to a place of just, I can deal with adversity. I can become courageous. I can be resilient. And then once I can, then part 2 is take command of your relationships, everything we do. And so to your question, Ray, you think about, there are relationships at work, there are relationships at home and my community, et cetera. But how do I build these really strong relationships? And so much of the wisdom that we're drawing on comes from How to Win Friends and Influence People for that part, and How to Stop Worrying in the first part. And then the third part of this is, okay, you've taken command of yourself, you're strong, you've got this fortitude, you've got great relationships. How do you take command of your future? What's the vision you have for yourself? Where are your values? And, Vala, one of the things I really appreciate about your tweets is, you're really focused on people and impact and kindness and legacy and respect, which is something that our world needs so desperately right now. And certainly one of the hopes that we have for Take Command, going back, Vala, to your point, is that people won't just read this book and say, hey, this is a good book, or I like the book, but it's like, we want this book to really help people, have better relationships, be more confident, live the life that you want to have. We hope that it will be a manual for how people can develop themselves and their relationships in the world.
Yeah, no, I to me, it's a graduate level set of courses on humanities, you surgically go after specific mindsets like criticism versus feedback. You have an entire, maybe 2,000 words specific to differentiating, how you approach giving feedback so that it's not viewed as criticism. And I share that on Twitter. And then folks like Tom Peters, who I think is one of the great living management gurus, comments. So I'm finding that company CEOs, Hall of Fame management gurus are responding to the content in your book because it is a blueprint on humanities and how I feel it's how to live a recommendable life. If you can take command of yourself and then help create value for folks around you and do that consistently, that's how you live a recommendable life. And in your book, you talk about connecting with people authentically and respectfully, which you and I and Ray try to do on social and when we're in front of folks physically, authentically and respectfully, as one of the important skills you can have. I wish I read this book when I was early in my career, because I think it would have positioned me better to be even more successful. Talk to us about the importance of authenticity and respect that's required to build and sustain long-lasting, healthy relationships.
I mean, at the end of the day, this is our life and we have this life and we can go about our lives trying to be someone that we're not. We're trying to portray something. And, number one, we think about authenticity. This is something that, Dale Carnegie talks about people when you give a speech, you give a presentation, don't try to be someone that you're not. Be who you are. When you are yourself, when you're excited, when you're eager, when you're earnest, or you just want to share something, you've earned the right to share. And that comes from you. It comes to life. It brings you to life. And that's where we're most fulfilled is when we are true to ourselves. We're true to our values. We're true to the things that we believe. So we want to act from a place of authenticity, and also we want to respect other people. So you've got different people with different points of view about relationships, and people saying people manipulate others, etc. And it's just that's the antithesis of what Dale Carnegie would say, or that we would say, which is, Dale Carnegie believed that every single person has an inherent value. That's why we want to respect people. And Val, as you said, every person I meet is my superior in some way. What can I learn from somebody else? What can I learn from an interaction? And if I'm going to give appreciation to you or to Ray, why not do it in anything but a sincere and honest and genuine way? I mean, Absolutely. And that ultimately is one of the key things about when we talk about relationships and trust. There has to be that empathy for another person. It's going to be like, I can see things from your point of view. I understand what's important to you and why. And if I don't, I'm going to ask you, I'm going to listen. But when we look at the polarization in the world and just how toxic things have become, and that's the byproduct of the opposite of what we're talking about, the byproduct of being undermining and not recognizing kind of that value that each of us have and that each of us can offer.
Ray, I want to just kind of a quick story because as much as I absolutely 1000% with everything Joe mentioned, there's one word he didn't mention. And if I had to describe Joe, and I met him in person a few weeks back, is humility. So Joe's asking me when we first time met, what do you do? I'm like, I write and do some research. What do you write about? Oh, I write about business and leadership. And Joe doesn't say anything, and then after, we break bread and continue the conversation. I'm like, oh, Joe, what do you do? I'm the CEO of Dale Carnegie. I'm like, oh my God, why did I tell him I write about leadership? It's like when you met an athlete, you find out they're a Hall of Fame athlete. You're like, oh, so anyway, the level of humility is that, I had to pull from you that you were the CEO of Dale Carnegie. Meanwhile, I write about leadership. So anyway, I think, and I immediately connected with you, like immediate karma. I'm like, wow, this guy is super humble. And so you didn't flex on me, your position, and I wouldn't expect you to do that. But I just, reflecting about my conversation, telling you that I was writing about leadership.
I was
felt
having
really-
too. Yeah, I was having too good of a time, honestly, getting to know you. I mean, you have an incredible story and background, and you're the chief digital evangelist, for Salesforce. I'm like, gosh, what an intriguing person. And we talked about, I mean, you're coming to the United States and being an immigrant. It was absolutely. And we talked about your kids, and we talked about. I mean, so I really, and it was one of the most gratifying conversations that I had with anyone. When I was in New York for those couple of days. So I was just really enjoying listening.
Another formula to success: establishing connection, be an amazing listener, and be interested in people. Clearly, you can see, Ray, I was doing most of the talking when Joe and I met, but so I need to make sure I read that section on being a better listener. Go ahead, Ray.
No, I think it's really important. I mean, when I remember some of those books, like what was it, Stop Worrying and Start Living, right? I mean, that's a classic. Right. I mean, it really resets where you are. And I almost feel like, today we're living in a world of machine scale. And what we're trying to do is get back to human scale. But a lot of those interactions, whether it's human to human, human to machine to machine, we're going to have to write an operating system that actually works this way, where your interactions, not just with people, but with other objects, right, are going to be ones that deliver trust, right? I don't know how you create digital empathy, but I need something to establish a relationship, and maybe that's what proof of stake and what you've done and what you continue to do, or what kind of value you continue to do to deliver for folks, right? Without a value exchange might even add to that. So let's talk about that. I mean, today it's with people, and the future might be operating at machine scale. How do we cultivate trust, build empathy, right? How do we actually build strong relationships? At least get it right on the human side.
Even like you see GPT chat being now blocked at universities because the output appears to be authentic human-like output. So it's harder and harder to judge student creativity and progression because the tools they're using are incredibly human-like.
Well, at the end of the day, I guess as long as we're dealing with human to human, and I don't know what the future holds for AI or what kind of operating system we'll need for that to help AI operate in a constructive and kind way. But when we think about people, I mean, there's a great quote, and it's not a new one. It comes from Theodore Roosevelt, which is, people don't care what you know until they know what that you care. And and the same thing is true in terms of how we interact with each other. If I'm going to engage someone, am I listening to them? Am I respecting them? Am I trying to talk over them? Am I, or am I giving honest and sincere appreciation? All those things are things we can use to get closer to someone and let them get closer to us, and then we build relationship. And over time, of course, and that's one of the things we talk about in the book. Relationships are often tested. They're tested by difficult people. They're tested by difficult situations. And how do we learn how to navigate those so we can continue to grow? Because at the end of the day, we think about what's life really about. Such a huge part of life is the quality of the relationships that we have. And if we've got lousy relationships, we're probably not going to be all that happy or fulfilled. So whatever we want to do, whatever our goals are in life, whether it's around a company or a nonprofit or an impact that we want to have, I've got to be effective in terms of how I interact with other people. So that's a big problem.
I love the section of the book, Joe, talking about handling stress, and you gave some incredible physical rest, mental rest, sensory rest, creative rest, emotional rest, social rest, spiritual rest. And I'm reading about all these different types of rest. But then you summarize it with 4 powerful words. For me, it was so powerful. You said, rest is not laziness. And I'm like, you know what? When I was a manager, a people manager, man, I confused folks that asked for time off or would go use the meditation room or would take a nice healthy lunch. And I'm like, yeah, their work ethic, I need to maybe coach them more to be a little bit more focused. And now I realized, boy, I was not a good manager because I was viewing rest as possible laziness. So I'm reading these sentences in your book, and I'm reflecting on my own privilege of managing people and running businesses and bringing products to market. And I realized I made a ton of mistakes. So, I mean, people got to read this book.
Well,
they really do.
Well, I'm sure you are being deeply not only introspective, but probably a little bit more critical of yourself. I'm sure that even at those times you were a tremendous manager. It's interesting, the conversation you just had with Deb about the way that, say, a younger generation looks at the world. You know, one generation may look at things in terms of go, and put hours and so forth, you know, versus another generation that says, well, look at the quality of the work that I'm doing. It isn't that good enough. You know, the reality is that we need to cut ourselves some slack when it comes to rest. We are human creatures, and that means that we need to take breaks. We need to, and not just physical rest, but mental rest, spiritual rest, a whole range of different kinds of things that go to who we are. And if we do that, then we're going to be far more effective in the work that we're doing and the relationships that we have and the goals that we have. But you know, taking command doesn't mean not taking rest. Taking command means take command of your mind, your body, your spirit, your life, and really live the life you want to live.
Amazing.
That is the optimum world. Live the life you want to live. We're with Joe Hart, President and CEO at Dale Carnegie and Associates Inc., and more importantly, the author of an upcoming book called Take Command. Check it out on the 10th. It's going to be sold where you're going to be found where books are sold, and of course, find him on Twitter at Joseph K. Hart, Hart, and of course, congratulations.
My highest recommendation of 2023, right here. Take command. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Val. And by the way, it's available right now for pre-order on Amazon. You can pre-order the Audible, Kindle, or hardcover. So Thank you both.
Thank you, Joe.
Great being with you.
Thank you.
All right.
Sir. Really a wonderful book, and it's going to take me some time to finish it because, again, I'm a slow reader, but there's a lot of nuggets of wisdom. Speaking of, we only invite brilliant authors on DisrupTV. Let's just kind of put that out there. And this is what we call the cleanup hitter spawn. If you're not familiar with baseball, it's the best-selling author that comes and hits a grand slam. And that's our next guest, Nick Santhanam, CEO, President of Fernweh Group, and author of Titanium Economy. Nick was formerly a senior partner at McKinsey Company at Palo Alto office. He led the North America industrial practice. He was co-author of several pieces of McKinsey's leading industrial research. He's on the advisory board of Smithsonian Libraries. He's a co-author of Titanium Economy, How Industrial Technology Can Create a Better, Faster, Stronger America. Welcome, Nick, to DisrupTV.
Thank you, Val. Thank you for having me.
Our pleasure. Our pleasure.
Hey, Nick, welcome. A lot of amazing insights. Your book really talks about something that, we haven't really been thinking about, or at least able to articulate in the right way. And that's really, there's some hidden bright spots, right, in what looks like a gloomy outlook, as you may have heard and seen in some of the conversations we have. We've been trying to psych ourselves into a recession since May. Like, economies are good in India, the economy's great in ANZA, right? The economy is great in the Middle East. It is horrible everywhere else. But it's been good in the U.S. And but people don't see that. Like, we feel like something bad has to happen, but you're saying otherwise. You're saying, hey, look, this is a bright spot, right, in today's otherwise gloomy outlook on the American economy. What is that hidden bright spot?
Ray, it's a great question. And maybe you just hit the genesis of this book. As Val mentioned, I used to be at McKinsey. Now I'm at Fernweh Group. And all we do is work in the industrial space. I almost can say very first response, as soon as I say industrial, people would be like, the 60s was a great time. That was a great sector. I'll be like, whoa, wait a minute. What are you talking about? It was not WASP. It is a great sector. And that's when, Ray, I just realized this light bulb went up and said, wow, this is truly a sector which is misunderstood, undervalued, and unappreciated. And the reason I bring this up is I can't tell you, and this is exactly the point you brought up, Ray. People would always say, this was a sector, we lost it. Somebody stole it. It was given away. And I'm like, again, guys, this is all past. And first of all, it's wrong. We're doing great. And if you look at the industrial sector, and I'm going to use the word industrial sector and manufacturing sector synonymously because they're not the same, but they're intertwined.
Sure.
It's doing great. And you saw about it in our book. We actually went and profiled 35 companies, and that's not exhaustive. There's way more companies. And these are the companies right here in the US doing amazingly great work, developing great products, hiring great employees, creating great value for the ecosystem. And best of all, I mean, I'm sure we are in a capitalist society. If you're a shareholder, making a lot of wealth for the shareholders. And we talk about this company called Heiko in the book, which very few people have heard about. And when we dug in, and we also didn't know about this, when we dug in and we spoke to the CEO, Larry Mendelson and Victor Mendelson, we found this is a company which has actually done better than any of the stock you can mention out there. I mean, if you look over the last 30 years, and if you had to go invest $1, they were in the top 10 of creating shareholder value.
Wow.
And they would have done better than Google. They've done better than Facebook. They've done better than Netflix. The list goes on. And here people are like, what? I never even knew about Heiko. And I'm like, and fortunately or unfortunately, it's one of several companies.
So you mentioned you identified 35, which is just a small subset of these companies that you bundle and call titanium economy, these industrial tech sector companies. How significant is the contribution of these companies to the American economy?
Short answer, Val, huge. I mean, if you look, just I'm looking at North America, right? I'm not even talking global. If you look at North America, there are north of 4,000 companies which classify into the industrial tech space.
Wow.
A big chunk of them are, 80% of them are what would people call mid-cap companies. About 2,000 or 3,000 of them are private, family-owned companies.
Okay.
And they are, fortunately or unfortunately, not in your tier 1, tier 2 cities. They're not in New York. They're not in San Francisco. They're in cities you and I would not have heard about, which is probably very difficult to get in. But they've created a very vibrant community. I mean, we talk about this in the book about a company called Sealed Air, which makes packaging material. You probably
Sealed Air, they're awesome. Yeah,
exactly. And they have created this vibrant community in Simpsonville. And you'll be like, I'm sure most people are saying, where is Simpsonville? Let me Google it. And if you ever visit Simpsonville, you'll be shocked at how great a community it is. And
wow.
And people live there, have great lives, go to colleges there. So it's one of those things which is, at least in my experience, as you can guess, I'm an immigrant. You know, for me, US was what I call the left coast or the right coast. You have San Francisco or you have New York. What's in middle? I have no clue. But now you realize the middle is where a lot of stuff is happening, and that's all enabled by the titanium economy companies.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and that's actually
I'm
really
an immigrant
interesting
as well. So for me, Boston was close to New York. East and West. You're right. You're absolutely right. Go ahead, Ray.
No, but this is interesting, right? I mean, you're right. These are companies that left the industrial belt. I grew up in Pennsylvania, right? They left Pennsylvania. Sealed Air, if I remember, is in Charlotte or in that area. And Charlotte itself is like Trane is there. Like a whole number of industrial companies have moved there. They bypassed the union workforce. They went to get better like labor laws and industrial policy in those states. And despite the outsourcing that occurred, I mean, this really created a very, very interesting, manufacturing sector in the American economy. And we use this all the time. We always say, you're right, it's a whipping bag. Like the American economy is dead, manufacturing is gone. We're forever not going to get these high-paying jobs back, right? This is something that we hit up pretty hard on both sides of the aisle, and whenever there's an election. And now we've psyched ourselves and believing that the manufacturing sector in the U.S. stinks. So this being under-recognized, it's no longer a asset class that investors care about, other than PE firms who figured out that, hey, this is a great place to actually make some investments. So talk about the players who actually made this call, right? I mean, there's some amazing PE firms. I mean, I don't know if these were listed in the book, but they've basically come back and said, look, we could actually make this work, almost like the Warren Buffett model.
And for our folks that just tuned in, Nick mentioned that of the 4,000 companies in North America that make up the industrial tech sector, somewhere between 2,000 to 3,000, so 50 to 66% are privately held companies. So as far
it's like
as
the
investing,
Mittelstadt in Germany.
So only a third of the population can invest in the industrial tech sector because they're the ones that are public companies. Okay, go ahead. Sorry, Jim.
Not available. Yeah, not available.
No, and Ray, you stole my punchline or my thunder, because that's exactly what we did. I mean, Fernweh, we are not a PE firm. We always say we are an investment company, which is we invest money in companies, but then we play a very active role in helping them grow and helping them scale up. And you hit the nail on the head, because we looked at this, myself and my team, and said, look, we are based here in California. We are based here in Bay Area, but we are not the techno jocks. We are not the guys looking at the SaaS companies or the latest and greatest next cryptocurrency or NFT, because one, we're not that smart. We don't understand it. But I always jokingly say we are more smart. We said, hey, look, on the other hand, there's these amazing industrial companies with great brands. They've been around for, pick a number, 50 years, 100 years, 150 years. They're right here in our neighborhood, creating value and making products you and I can touch. And so guess what? This was very true pre-COVID, but post-COVID, or during COVID and post-COVID, everybody woke up and said, wait a minute, I can't be waiting for something to come from China or Vietnam. I need my industrial base right here in the US, whether you needed your toilet paper, which was a big scare, even though there wasn't one, or any of the other things which you need. You need real products. You need products you can touch, you can feel. And those are all made by industrial companies. And that's when the renaissance is happening, or has happened, where people are like, look, you can't outsource your industrial base. Never was, let's be very clear. Parts were, but not fully. But I'm going to say, and time will tell, but we sort of said, guys, this is really where the real thing is happening. Industrials is the next big thing. It was not the past, but it's the future.
Nick, when we talked to Deb and we talked to Joe, we talked a lot about leadership. We talked about culture. We talked about the hybrid work environment. We talked about Gen Z and what their view is in terms of balance of, work life. What are the jobs and salary outlooks in this sector? So if we've got, we average about 50,000 views of our show. Let's say there are 5,000 college students or early in their career folks that are watching now. What can you tell them to draw into this, what seems to be an incredibly fruitful sector to be in?
Great question, Val. When we wrote this book, we said, people asked us, who did you write it for? And I said, we wrote it for two customers or two suppliers. One is supplier of capital and one is for supplier of talent. Because genuinely today, this industry can be even more bigger if we got more people into it. So that's the 21-year-old and the 23-year-old smart students who are listening to this saying, hey, should I go into Google or should I go into the industrial tech? And people are like, I don't know about industrial tech. But the best part, Val, is exactly this. Just to put things in context, a services job in the US today pays about $30,000 median. Industrial job pays $65,000.
Wow. More than 2x. Wow.
Yep. So that transition from a manufacturing economy to services economy actually decreased their quality of life, which is why two people have to go to work every day in a family.
Yeah.
Wow. And let's shorten this recession cycle we're in with the industrial tech sector. It sounds like people just need to know. Man, is this the best hidden secret? Do you have to be a McKinsey partner to have these insights? How did you, we need better marketing in this sector.
Actually, since now we have got into this and we are a Fernweh group, I don't want to market it. Let the investors.
Don't tell me about this until he's placed all his bets.
Some breaking news on DisrupTV.
Let's not talk about that. But that's the thing. When we looked at these 35 companies, and I think I can't tell you how many people I interviewed who were retiring from the companies. So whether it is the Heikos of the world or whether it's the AZZs of the world. Sure. And the list goes on. We're retiring with $1 million in their 401k. You're talking about, this is not about the top guy. Forget the top guy. I'm talking about the frontline operator who joined the company 35 years ago, 25 years ago, stayed through the company, invested in their 401k, matched it.
Single contributors.
$1 million.
Unbelievable! Wow.
Yeah, but not everybody knows what a hot dip galvanizer is, right? So that's
true. That is true. You're right. But
my daughter is sophomore at university. I'm going to have her watch this episode. This is, and then we got to call our wealth management folks, Ray, and you and I we got to revisit.
Yeah, what's wrong with your investment portfolio? I don't know.
Totally.
But Ray, but this is the funniest part, right? Look, we are based here in the US. And as Fernweh, we invest in companies. And the very first question people say is, oh, so what do you guys do? Are you going to move the job somewhere else? And I say, look, like Dabico is a great example. We bought this company. Our manufacturing plants are in 3 locations. Cypress, California, which is 20 minutes from LA. I don't know about you, buddy, but LA is a pretty expensive place. Ditzenbach, which is 10 minutes from Frankfurt, which is a really expensive place. And Stockton-on-Tees in UK, where the labor rates are going up. And we have no plans to move manufacturing from those places. Why? Because we've got great people, we create great innovation. So my point is, which is again, one of these things, people say, wait a minute, you have manufacturing in the highest cost location. And I say, no, we have manufacturing in the highest value locations because those are amazing people, amazing talent. They create great value. Where else would I have it?
Well, the regulatory.
Why are you and I, Ray, talking to Web3 Metaverse NFT folks? Nick, you got to get back.
I don't know. We're going to change our policy here as well. I mean, but
enterprise software was sexy. Boy, were we wrong. Sorry,
we were so wrong. But it is beautiful what you're saying because the capital cost to actually build a plant today and the regulatory requirements wouldn't allow you to do that anymore. That piece of land actually is much more valuable sometimes than the plant as well in some of those cases. You also stress that there's a point here that we don't have a lot of time left to get this right. And you mentioned 5 years left. Why did you choose that number? And what do we actually have to do? Because we're not a country that's very good at industrial policy. We're so short-term focused on quarter to quarter. We're on day 4 of trying to make up our minds as to how this country is being run in some houses and of Congress. And but it's just crazy. Like we're short-term people. I mean, this whole economy is built on short-term. And you'd say, oh my God, we have 5 years left. What is that burning platform?
So Ray, you hit the nail on the head, right? We as a country are very good at reacting. So let's go back to the 60s. We were not the first guy to go into space. But as soon as the Russians got on, we said, God damn it, we really need to go get better than them and put a man on the moon. And guess what? We did it. Fast forward 50 years, we were the leaders, or 40 years, we were the leaders in semiconductors. And we fell asleep on the wheel and all the semiconductor manufacturing moved out of the country, or a big chunk. And now you read about it, you're like, oh my God, they're going to bring it all back in. Will it happen? I hope so. But we as a country are very good at what I call reactive, and we do well. But in the industrial space, I truly believe this is one of the very rare opportunities, Ray, that we can be not reactive, but also be proactive. And this is why we want to put the 5-year mark. It's not because anything is magical, but guys, we are already good. You take precision manufacturing, like semiconductor equipment manufacturing, which is key to making semiconductor. We do rule it.
The tool die manufacturing, that's an area we're good at, right? We also have opportunity zones that we can pair up. We have training programs that have not built into policies that could be put together. But why 5 years? I'll push you a little bit harder on that. Why not 3? Why not 10?
And can you tie the answer possibly to what you expect from the educational sector or government in terms of policies? At Salesforce, we have globally, 8,000-9,000 colleges and universities as clients. What should they be doing to enable the future workforce to not only have enthusiasm about the sector, but the right set of skills to make impact in near term?
Or trade programs as well. So
internships,
actually,
co-ops.
Ray and Val, they're all connected. The reason for 5 years is very simple. We need the best talent. And if you look at what is happening in this country with demographics, you look at the labor market, people are dropping out like flies. Let's call a spade a spade. You have some of the best minds. They're all, you draw the curve, most of them are in the 50s. And in the next 5 years, you're going to have a massive talent drain in the space. And if the listener who's in a high school, goes into college, is going to be coming out, I desperately want that he or she to be going into the industrial tech space. So that means they need to be studying about it in college. They need to be getting excited about it so that when they come out, they are really applying to these industrial tech space and not saying, gee, I went to MIT or Caltech or Princeton or any of these, or any school for that matter, and say, oh, I'm just going to go, be the 111th guy at Google or Facebook. So that is why the 5-year matters, Ray, because if you really do the math, you look at the demographics, in the next 5 years, it's law of demand and supply, right? There's a massive outflow of labor. And the guys and gals going to college now need to choose that. Otherwise, we are going to be having a huge disconnect.
Hugely important.
Got it. We are here with Nick Santhanam, CEO and president of Fernweh Group and author of The Titanium Economy. And this is amazing. I really think this is a very, very piece that we should actually be studying more. And the book is available on Amazon, and hopefully you're sending it to policymakers in Congress. Well, they got a lot of free time right now, so yeah.
Nick, thank you so much. Congratulations on the book.
Thanks, Val, and thanks, Ray.
Thank you, sir.
Wow. It's another Friday. Wow.
Episode 1 of 2023. And we get three authors, three big thinkers, an innovation expert, a leadership expert, and a technology industry market expert. Ray, do us a favor and try to recap the last hour for us in a minute, if you could.
Well, we really wanted to kick off the year helping people think about what their strategies were for business. And, Deb did a great job of setting the stage, saying, hey, look, these are things that are changing, right? I mean, you've got factors that are changing, as she would probably say it, grow up, grasp the issues, take the bull by the horns. And, this is what we're dealing with, right? And it's going to require a different way of leading. Right. And I think that's just important. Right. And as you're putting your plans together, you have to think about what that means. And then, Joe was just great about, helping us to create that introspection. Right. Take command basically says, get yourself in order first. Right. And then figure out how and you interact with everybody. And as you're figuring out that interaction, right, then people can trust you, right? Or they can know what you're thinking or find empathy with someone else so that they can actually help you move in the same direction. Right. And that's very important. We're seeing sales kickoffs, right? You got all these sales kickoffs going on probably at the beginning of the year, beginning of, end of February, right? They're all going to be trying to say, hey, let's all move in the same direction. Here's our vision. Here's our goals, right? Here's what sales kickoff is going to be. Rah, rah, rah. But you gotta believe in your leaders, right? And you gotta do that interaction. But what was surprising about what was going on with Nick is really just, there are sectors that we have overlooked. Right. We've overlooked. Maybe it's because, coastal elites thought that, hey, these weren't important anymore. Or maybe we just thought that, at some point, manual labor or industrial was like a dirty word and, we were going to move on. But the reality is like my brother's a human plumber. He's a GI. Right. I would tell you that the physical plumber in the area where I live in probably makes more than the human plumber. Right. I mean, the physical plumber is making $350 an hour.
65,000 starting salary is pretty good. It's pretty good.
It's pretty good. I mean, and so I think trades have been overlooked. I think policies have kind of neglected it. Not everybody has to go to college to be successful. I think we're starting to learn that. And, the industrial sector is you still got to make stuff, right?
Yeah.
We can't live without making stuff. It's not,
absolutely.
I mean, you and I are going to wipe our butts in the metaverse.
If you're a chemical engineering student or electrical or civil, I I think the engineering practice in the industrial tech is going to be very lucrative career, very lucrative. And
the problem is they all end up as a McKinsey consultants. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, well, hey, it worked out for Nick.
They end up like as McKinsey consultants. But that's where we are, right? I mean, this is really like it's a shift. We're kicking off the year, right? Vala, I mean, any advice from you? I mean, you've been talking to people at the beginning of the year as well.
I think all of our incredible guests talked about and even reference words like grit and persistence and optimism, humility, being interested in others. I think you need to really develop those skills. I think 2023 will continue to be tough. I mean, in the tech sector, in the last 6 months, I think 150,000 jobs have been lost. Today, Canada produced an employment number of 104,000 new jobs with a forecast of only 5,000. So they crushed the number that they had forecasted in terms of new jobs. So there's employment there, but again, there are more talent now seeking those open jobs. So, and I think it will continue to be a tough environment. But just invest in yourself, invest in folks around you. Ultimately, the best I can give is, leave things better than when you found them. That's it. Definitely. Leave things better than when you. When I interact with Ray, he always expands my mind. That's why I spend every Friday with him for the last 6 years. He leaves me better than when he found me 6 years ago. So that's ultimately, no matter what function you have, no matter what company size, whether it's public or private or whatever sector, You just have to be mindful and self-aware that you're adding value. And if you're honest with yourself, the minute you feel like you're not adding value, you're not leaving the person or the place better than when you found them, you got to reflect. And Nick kind of warned us about that. We are very good at reflexive thinking. If something happened, we respond to it really quick. Reflective thinking is what's required to be self-aware and truly honest with yourself in terms of whether you're adding value or not. And I think that's a muscle that we all need to continuously develop. You can create self-awareness atrophy if you start feeding yourself things that are not quite true. So anyway, I don't want to get philosophical on this.
You got to love our DisrupTV guy, Chris Lockhead. I mean, he really made us.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly. Chris talked about that. Ray, next week we have episode 306. Our first guest is going to be James Altucher, who's just an amazing entrepreneur, an amazing podcaster. His blogs make you think, and he's bold, and he's provocative, and he's on the edge. Altucher can be, he could be. We could talk to him for an hour. So I don't know how we're gonna. You and I have to bring our A game because he's going to give us just incredible amount of wisdom. Mauro Porcini, Chief Design Officer at PepsiCo, and author of Human Side of Innovation, is going to be our guest as well. I think we're going to limit next week to 2 guests. Ray and I are discussing.
We got to give them more time. We got to give these guys more time.
Yeah, I know James and he's brilliant. I don't know Mauro, but Chief Design Officer at PepsiCo. So that's all that needs to be said. Obviously, a brilliant person with a new book. So if it's Friday, it's DisrupTV. Please join us next week, same time, 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 where Ray is, somewhere in California, I'm assuming.
And Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New
Make
Year.
it an amazing 2023.
Excellent. Thank you.